everybody, welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. It is the end of January and really it's the end of a lot of things for me right now. It's actually the end of my school year. I just went out on maternity leave and I won't be going back until next school year, and it's almost the end of my pregnancy. So next week I'm gonna have a baby. I have my little hand shelf right here. This is, it's a little comfy position right now. So I kind of have that like end of pregnancy burst of energy. And so I wanted to share with you 5 book recommendations from the month of January, because all of the books that I read in January I would recommend. And before we get started, this portion of the video is very kindly sponsored by BBC Select. We love a sponsored portion. On BBC Select, you can stream documentaries, TV shows about true crime, travel, food, history, politics, current events, all of the kind of things that I love to watch. And like I said, I'm about to have a baby. So I do remember that last time when I had Jensen, I needed like a few shows just kind of like lined up for me that I could watch during that like active downtime. There's a lot of time where you're just like nursing or pumping or like burping or whatever, and it can be a little bit mind numbing. So you definitely want to have something on that kind of like keeps you company. And for me, it was also important to have something that kind of like kept me intellectually stimulated. So right now I have a little list queued up of all the things that I'm gonna be watching. And even though I'm not teaching for the rest of the semester, I still like to watch things that just kind of like inspire me. So I actually just started watching this one called Right Around the World, and it's a travel show with Richard E. Grant through the lens of books. So he goes to the places where these certain books are set and like learns more about just the actual setting, like the geography and the food and the people and what it looks like and feels like. And so it's just such a cool concept, and I have a feeling that this could inspire like some ideas for some English lesson plans, either for like writing or just like being inspired by the settings in books and stories. So this one just sounds really fun. If you're an English teacher, I think this one could be really fun for you to watch. And then I also teach ancient history, and again, I know I'm not teaching right now, but I'm always looking for inspiration. I'm always looking for like really high quality and just like really well done documentaries that I can show my students when it comes to ancient history. Like I love finding footage of people who are actually in this place talking about this place, so we can really visualize like what it would have looked like thousands of years ago. I found a couple different documentaries. One is just Ancient Worlds. I'm excited to just kind of like watch that one and like make a note of different sections that I could use in my teaching next year. Just before I left, I was teaching ancient China, and there's a whole documentary on the Silk Road. And we just got this new curriculum, and honestly, like the Silk Road section there wasn't a whole lot there. And I was like, oh my gosh, the Silk Road is like so much fun to talk about and look at, and it spans, so much space and geography and all these different people. So I'm really excited to watch that one and just find sections of it that I could use in class to like supplement the curriculum. And then there's another one on Confucius, and we had done our lesson on Confucianism, and we're all big fans of Confucius. So I would love to know even more and just be able to bring that into my teaching. And just for myself, it's just so nice to just like watch documentaries about art. They have one about women and art that I would just like love to have playing while I'm doing all the baby stuff. There's one about the art of Scandinavia, which I'm really interested in. Like the past couple of years, that's really become a thing in the United States, that kind of Scandi look, IKEA, whatever. So I want to watch that one. There's one called The Power of Art that also just looks really good. So I want to watch those just like for fun and inspiration. And then there's also one called Britain's Caribbean Heroes. And if you don't know, my master's work is in Caribbean history and Black Caribbean civil rights leaders and there's like so much context to unearth around that topic. And so I wish I had access to this one like when I was doing my master's research, because I have a feeling this could illuminate a few things for me. So I'm going to be watching that one. And there's another one that kind of goes along with it to provide even more context. It's like Britain's forgotten slave owners, and that, you know, mostly occurred in the Caribbean as well. So all of those are just, you know, piquing my interest at the moment, and I know I have a lot of time to fill coming up, which is fine. Like it's a very sleep deprived time, and a time when you just like can't really leave your house. But if you can, you know, have a few things on deck ready to keep you company, ready to just like keep you like awake and alert while you bond with the baby and do all the things that they need, then, you know, there's aspects of it that are pretty nice. So I will leave a link below for you where you can find out more about BBC Select. You get a 7-day free trial, and it's $4.99 per month after that for access to some really great content. So thank you so much to BBC Select for sponsoring this portion of the video. Let's jump over to my 5 book recommendations from January. My first book of the year this year was The Epic Crush of Jeannie by F.C. Yee. And I wanted to make sure to add some Asian mythology of some kind to our fantasy lit circles this year. I have lots and lots of information about fantasy lit circles on my channel and on my Instagram. And so this is one that I added this year. It fit in really well with the themes of our other books, and this was probably the most popular book. Like, this is the one that kids got most excited about. I teach 7th grade, and you know, you could argue that this is maybe a little bit more relevant for high school kids. There's like a little bit of cussing and stuff in this book, but it's, I don't know, it's nothing crazy. But the protagonist is in high school. She's 16, she's a sophomore, and when the book starts off, her main focus really is just like getting into a good college. She lives in kind of like a fictional suburb of San Francisco in the Bay Area, but it feels very much, you know, like those actual suburbs of San Francisco. She's really tall. She's a volleyball player, and she has a best friend named Jeannie. They go to school together, and then one day this new kid named Quentin shows up at their school, and everything changes from there. So I don't want to give too much away, but it's all rooted in Chinese mythology. If you've read that graphic novel, American Born Chinese, that's about like the legend of the Monkey King, it would be good to actually read that first and then go into this book, because it goes into a lot more details about those Chinese myths. So I thought this one was really good. It's really funny. It's like laugh out loud funny. And with this one, I actually did just kind of like go back and forth between the physical book and the audiobook. All my students kept like taking my last copy. Like I would just have like one more copy for myself to read, and then somebody would want it, and I'd be like, all right, fine. So I'd like listen to the audiobook until I could get another physical copy. But it was actually also really nice to listen to the audiobook because I got all of the pronunciation, and it's very well done. The reader is really good. I'm kind of picky about the readers, and I don't like most of them, but this one is really good. So I recommend it in both forms, either the physical form or the audiobook. And there is a sequel to this book that I bought so that I could read. I have not gotten a chance to read it because so many of my students have taken it and then like passed it around to each other because they really wanted to see what happens next in the series. So someday I'll get that second book back and I'll be able to read, I think it's called The Iron Will of Jeannie Lo. The second book that I read was a graphic novel, and this one is just so beautiful. I don't usually read a lot of graphic novels, to be honest, but I'm trying to get into them a little bit more so that I'm able to use them more in teaching and just like be familiar with more titles and, you know, have some to recommend to students who really like graphic novels. This one is called Aquacorn Cove by Katie O'Neill, and it's just gorgeous. I also bought the Tea Dragon Society, which I think is maybe like a little bit more popular I mentioned that one on Instagram and a lot of people said that they had read it. So I'll read that one soon as well. So this one is about a little girl who goes back to the island where she was born with her father, and her mother has passed away. So they're just visiting her mom's sister. But there has been a storm on the island and people are kind of like rebuilding and trying to restock, and like crops that they had planted got messed up. So people are kind of coming together and trying to fix up their community. But the storms are getting worse and they're getting more frequent. And people who live on the island are trying to figure out how to survive in this new reality where they need to like sustain themselves with like the fish from the ocean and the food that they grow, but then also like take some more so that they can sell it, so they also have like money. But then there is a magical element to this story as well. And they find out through these sea creatures like the effects that this overfishing and stuff is having on the cove and the coral. And so this definitely has a strong theme, you know, about climate change and about how everything that we do to the earth and to the ocean comes back and impacts us as humans. So if we mistreat the planet, we also have to deal with the consequences when, you know, the oceans and soil and stuff that has sustained us seems like it turns on us because we have caused it to do that. So it has like some really interesting discussions actually in here about like, okay, but like we have to survive, we have to eat. And even if just our little island makes changes, that's not going to have enough of an impact. So it does a really good job of kind of like exploring like the tension in that, like how are individual people or individual communities supposed to even try to make a difference when this is like a global issue. So anyway, it's very beautiful. I love the different characters and kind of like the different body types. The aunt is my favorite. The sea creatures are so pretty. It's just like, I feel like it's just one of my favorite books now. And it would be so much fun to read in class and to use for a unit about like the environment and weather and climate change. So if you are a science teacher, this could be a really cool thing to like work into your class. Or if you have an English unit that is already like on that topic. Ooh, next year I'm going to use this for sure. We have a unit in our textbook called like Nature at Work. So I'm going to add this to it. I just decided. The next book that I read seemed to be very popular on Instagram for quite a while. I saw this cover a lot. It is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. And I never really got a good sense of like what it was about. And so I just was never motivated to pick it up. But then I saw on Netflix that there was a series based on this book. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I clicked on it. It's in Swedish. The first episode is hilarious. Like I got really hooked by it. So I watched a couple of episodes and then I was like, okay, I've got to stop watching, order the book, read the book, and then finish the series so I can like kind of compare the two. I always like to read the book first. So I had to like stop myself from continuing to watch the series. There's maybe like 6 or 7 episodes. So it's a dark comedy that is all kind of centered around this hostage situation within like an open house at an apartment that is near a bank. And somebody had tried to rob the bank, but it was a cashless bank. And so then they ran into this apartment showing open house thing. And now all of these people are held hostage. And there are these 2 police officers who are father and son, and they're trying to figure out who the bank robber assailant is, because once everybody leaves the apartment, the bank robber is like nowhere to be seen. So they're trying to crack the case. And this book is more of like, it's kind of like an allegory. The book is obviously able to go much deeper than the show. So the book really looks at each character's life as they are interviewed by the police, and all of the characters are like outrageous. Someone on Instagram said they couldn't really relate to any of the characters, and I was like, well, I would hope not, because they're all like preposterous. Like all of their backstories are like really weird, and they do things that are just like not understandable. Like, why would you do that? Or why would you act like that? Or why would you treat people like that? But kind of the moral of the story is, like, as you read about their situations and the reason why they did what they did, you're moved to have compassion for them, to have grace for them. So it's a really beautiful book in that sense, that it's just almost like practice in waiting to pass judgment on somebody until you know a little bit more about them and can like understand the reasons behind their actions. And so some of the characters are quite different in the book versus the Netflix series, but I really liked both. Like they're similar enough that it helps to like read the book to understand the series or watch the series to understand the book, but they are also like pretty different. My favorite character in this book is the wife of the older police officer. She's a priest and she's actually dead in the book, but they just like remember things about her, and she is my favorite, and she doesn't show up in the Netflix series because there are a lot of characters to keep track of. Again, that's sort of the point because they're like going through all these suspects. So also, I thought that the first page was just like one of the strongest first pages that I've read in a really long time. This story is about a lot of things, but mostly about idiots. So it needs saying from the outset that it's always very easy to declare that other people are idiots, but only if you forget how idiotically difficult being human is, especially if you have other people you're trying to be a reasonably good human for. So I definitely recommend it. I picked up the Ove one. I forget the actual title. People recommended, others of his books. So I'll read through some of those as well. I think Jensen's playing video games in the next room, so that's what all of that yelling is. Playing on his original Nintendo. The next book that I read was a recommendation from Amory's book club. This is a memoir. It's called This Boy We Made, a memoir of motherhood, genetics, and facing the unknown by Taylor Harris. So this book is written from the perspective of Taylor, and she grows up as a Black girl in Ohio, and then she moves to Virginia where she meets her husband. She struggles with anxiety for most of her life, and it continues into motherhood, and she has a daughter, and then she has a little boy, and he has these episodes where like his blood sugar just drops drastically, and he has to be taken to the hospital, and doctors can't figure out exactly what this is, what is wrong with him, or how to treat him. And so the book is about her and her family and how they navigate like the medical system as a Black family in Virginia and try to get people to listen to them and take their concerns seriously. And then their son starts like preschool and goes into kindergarten, and so he also needs certain accommodations and services because he has these medical conditions, but they also don't really have a name. So it's just something where like the teacher and like the special ed department just has to listen to the parents and just listen to what he needs, because they can explain it, but it doesn't necessarily have a name that you can like check on the box. And so in her experiences, like there are some teachers who are great and listen to them and work with her son and help him to thrive, and then there are others that are just very dismissive and want to do as little as possible to help them. And if you're a teacher like I am, like you see that all the time, and it's really frustrating, and just to like see that again, like through the eyes of a mom who is like, this is my son and he is amazing, and we, you know, struggle every single day to make sure that he's taken care of and healthy, and we're constantly watching his health, and we need you to do that too. You really feel like her frustration. Her husband is like a pastor and a counselor, and their family is Christian. So, you know, it's also just interesting to see all of this like through the lens of faith. So for me, I really liked this one, and I would definitely recommend it if that just, you know, like sounds like it's up your alley. And the sections on like IEPs and special education and stuff are really important for teachers to see, and just like be reminded of the humanity behind that paperwork. The last one that I read, I had been saving for the month of January for like almost a year. So this one is called The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Haro. This is a very beautiful book. This is a book lover's book. So you can tell from the cover, a gorgeous cover, these kind of like raw edges. This is the hardcover, so even like the hardcover version is really, really pretty. Within the story, there are all of these little like Easter eggs and just like, you know, little asides about how like the letter D, like a capital D, looks like a door, and everything that the main character January learns is from this book. And then like her power becomes like writing and storytelling. So all of it is just kind of like an homage to stories. And once you get to the end, you see that there were like a lot of really just like well thought out like literary details within the story. So there's a character named Mr. Locke who locks January away, and he also like locks doors in another sense. And so if you pay attention, you'll just see a lot of those little things hidden within this. It's just, again, very much like a book lover's book, and it's a portal fantasy. So this girl January is able to like go through these doors into other worlds. Sometimes they're just other places, sometimes it's other times, and she's in like the future or the past, and she can kind of go all over the world. And she's also following in the footsteps of some other people. So this is set around the turn of the 20th century, and there's definitely commentary upon the fascination at that time, and you know, maybe still today, but like especially at that time, of gathering like oddities and objects from around the world to add to a collection. If you were a rich person, it's like having that be a status symbol, like a sign of your wealth and being cultured, but it's just stealing a bunch of stuff from other people. So January's father is employed by this really rich man, and her father goes around and finds rare objects and brings them back to Mr. Locke. January doesn't know exactly what happened to her mother. She just knows that her mother died when she was an infant, but through this book that she finds and these other worlds, she kind of unravels the story of what happened to her dad and her mom. And for most of the book, she's like 17, I think, like 17 or 18. So this could be a classroom book. Like this would be fine. It's not like it's like inappropriate or anything like that. It's a little bit hard to follow the threads of the plot at first because it jumps back and forth. Like it's in first person from her perspective, and then in other chapters it's in first person, but someone is writing about somebody else, so then it's like in third person kind of, and it's a little bit tricky to figure out what is happening. And then it does come together and like all of it makes sense, but I could see people maybe like giving up on this one at the beginning because it's sort of hard to follow those little plot threads. So it does take some concentration. But yeah, it's just a very pretty book. The language is pretty. What happens in the book is not necessarily so pretty, but it's just a really good one to read in January, I think. and it's sort of opening the door, pardon the pun, for me to get into a little bit more like adult fantasy, because that's not really my favorite thing, but I liked this one, so maybe I can read a little bit more. So those were my 5 for the month of January. I liked them all. I recommend them all. Let me know down below in the comments if you've read any of them or if any of those books are on your list to read soon. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and talking about books. I will see you soon. I don't know if the baby will be here or not by the time I edit and post this video, but yeah, in the next couple weeks we're gonna see some changes. But I also do have some videos pre-recorded to take me like through the month of February pretty much. So you'll probably be seeing like me from the past throughout the month of February, because I have all these videos pre-recorded like while I'm still pregnant. Since when she comes, who knows when the next time I'll be able to make a video is. So I would love it if you would keep hanging out with me on Sunday mornings. That's when I usually post my videos. So I'm working hard right now, right at the end of my pregnancy, to make sure I've still got some content up here for you guys. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.